He's fixing it.
He's
out.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll stop talking for a minute.
I was trying to catch you quick.
Sorry, it's okay. You just gotta say, hey, Stephanie, shut up.
There's a few differences to the calculations you all worked on yesterday, which
Okay,
change this.
more or less.
So I went and took out, like we discussed yesterday, that we thought.
Mhm. I'm listening.
Leaving grant people in would kind of negate doing the calculation with benefits.
Uh-huh.
So then I went and removed to see what the difference was,
Mhm.
and it ends up coming out a little bit more at what we calculated.
It's almost $1 million.
Almost $1 million more.
841,000 is what I have.
It would.
It would cost a general fund.
Right.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Because of at one point in time, that theory worked. It no longer works because of the contribution to the health fund and everything is.
Well, not the
Doesn't
contribution to the health fund, but the
shake out.
FRS went up a
But-
chunk.
So question, and just as we were kind of talking through this when we met with for the ESP part and we started to look at some of that decompression, didn't we, and just remind me, didn't we pull out the pot of money that it would take for the new FRS contribution out of that general fund new money? So like we minus 13 million for the health insurance, knowing that that's what the board was going to contribute to keep us at status quo this year. And then didn't we pull out what it would be for because I think it was about 9 or 10 million that it was costing us for the FRS increases. And I thought we pulled that out too of the new money.
So
It's based on
I see where you're
employees.
going.
That's what I just want to make sure that we're not double
No,
counting for it.
And let me make sure. That's a good question.
Yeah, because I thought we had already accounted for it
Million
for the health insurance,
is leaving salaries where they are.
leaving insurance. Wait,
For FRS.
For FRS and insurance.
so
Insurance.
as they are now.
As they are now.
Okay,
So that's.
I am, okay.
Nothing for salary increases.
That's what it would,
Retirement, FRS
okay,
increase in contribution is just for salaries.
okay, I see.
Because we don't try to get in this.
Projecting, yeah.
Trying to project out.
Okay.
We might go with salaries.
Okay, I understand. Okay,
So we can look at this framework, but it would.
it could shift a little bit.
Change. probably.
Okay. Well, and maybe what we do, because and we can actually talk, well, we'll talk through it and then we might be able to find where some of that is. Anyway, so because there's really, are we back on? Okay, so there's really only so many ways to really divvy this up for 7,000 people, knowing that we have to break up compression too. That has to be where we start. And also knowing that years of experience in SAP are a nightmare right now, because the system is limited. And so what JD and I worked on yesterday, which you guys have in front of you now, and sorry, Wilfredo, I got hung up and didn't print. I'm printing.
Let me say this. The biggest change I made when trying to get it back down to where it was right around the 9.7
Yeah.
was instead of 180, I think I was at 71. It's not
Okay.
a lot,
No, but
but you still have the movement in there like we.
yeah, but the movement would stay the same then. Okay. And that's what as I was thinking that you had said around 800, because we had like 1.2 million left after we tried to kind of move people down the schedules. And that's when we're like, well, we really can't do much. We can't, because we had costed out, well, what would another level movement look like? Right. And then it was like 2.5, almost 3 million, like for just another move. And so we're like, well, we can't do that. And so, well, how can we use this 1.2 million? So we're like, well, let's just divide it up and then add that money into the salary schedule. Right. So that they're getting it and then they also move and that can kind of make our thing. But if FRS, if it's not quite where it needs to be with the grant funded people pulled out, we have that 1.2 that and that's where I was going to go with that is maybe a possible suggestion.
Yeah, like I've already done a quick calculation on it and I dropped it to $71 instead of the 180.
Okay.
Everything else we had the same and it comes in right
Okay.
around where we were before.
So that could be where our wiggle room is. And so, so I'll go through if that's all right, JD, of kind of how we did this. And this is just, it's not, because we're doing this kind of together. It's not necessarily a proposal. So like, we really want to work on this together to see what best works. I think, oh, and here's more copies if you guys need paper copies. And give me one more, so we'll print it. And they're front and back this one. And so what JD and I had worked on is we started with the pay for performance schedule. And for numbers purposes, JD combined the student services pay for performance into the teacher pay for performance because because the difference of their schedule is they have their master supplement added in. And so that's already a cost that you guys are already incurring. So we added the number. So if your student services are on AAI, we grouped them in with teacher pay for performance AAI because that's a function of the teacher pay for performance anyway. And so to better cost it out and make it easier. We did the same with the grandfathered student services, moved them into whatever pay level correspond into the teacher grandfathered because it comes from that. So essentially we're looking at three general salary schedules, the pay for performance, the grandfathered, and then the OTPT sign language interpreter pay grade. And so we started with the pay for performance because the majority of our teachers are now on pay for performance. And so the biggest group of teachers is on that. So we wanted to see what the impacts would be looking at pay for performance first, and then looking at grandfathered and OTPT and sign language interpreters. And so, and this is going to take a couple years too, but the salary compression in the teachers actually isn't as bad as it is in the support staff contracts. So we were able to do a little bit more movement here than you might see in the support staff initially, because it's not as bad in the teachers. Right now, the teachers are compressed in 47.5 years 0 to 13 years now with the completion of this year. And we have para and ESP contract pay grades that are 0 to 21 years of experience compressed into the first pay level. And so the some of the support staff pay grades are going to take a little bit longer to break that up. Just for people's background here. And so what we looked at was how many people were in AAD, and we broke them up based on their years of experience. So how many had 1, how many 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 13, because all of those folks are compressed into AAD right now at 47.5. And so keeping the base salary the same at 47.5, since we're at the minimum, we don't want to raise the base anymore. We want to use the money to address the compression for our veteran teaching staff. So leaving the base at 47.5 is important to us. And so that you see that reflected here. And then what we have for potential for the 23-24 is teachers with experiences of years 1 to 3 would move 1 level to AAE. Teachers with 4 to 5 would move 2 levels down the schedule. And when I say down the schedule, not less money, you're making more money. You're moving like A, B, C, D, E, F. You're moving down the alphabet, essentially. Teachers with 6 to 7 years would move 3 levels down to AAG. Teachers with 8 to 9 would move 4 levels down to AAH. With 10 to 11 years, they'd move 5 to AAI. 12 to 13, they'd move 6 levels to AAJ. And then if they're currently on AAE, which is like year 14 roundabout and down, every other level would move down 6. And then that right now costs about almost $8.5 million to do that out of the 9.7 that we had. And so with the remaining of the money, we don't have enough money left to actually move another full level. And so the conversation that JD and I had was, well, let's divide it up and then just add a little bit of money into the salary schedule too. And so based on what JD had said, and this is in your employees are now getting benefits and retirement they weren't getting before, even though they don't physically see it now. That does cost money to do that as well. And it's not coming out of our pocket. Well, I guess it isn't essentially, but it's coming out of your primary pocket. But it's helping us in retirement. So we are getting a retirement benefit, but the district has to pay for that. And so we have, I just lost my train of thought. So out of the 1.2 million, we have, you said it'd be like 800,000 additionally. So there's really maybe 400,000 left. which isn't a lot of money when you have 7,000 people. So we're looking to, well, we want to use all of it. And so what JD is saying is that if we add about $70 into the existing levels, in addition to the movement that people will, see, then that uses pretty much all the money.
So everyone would get additional.
Yeah.
I mean, based on what you got here.
Yeah, the $70 would just be added in as an improvement to the schedule. Yeah,
But not on base.
but not on the base. The base is staying at 47.5.
Right.
Yeah, but that uses essentially almost all the money.
Yep.
And really, and again, this is gonna take a couple years because we're gonna have to break up 1 through 3 eventually, 4 through 5. But for this year with the amount of money we have, and we still want a 3-year, like how we're gonna break this up, but this is what we're thinking might be best for this year. And so,
So
and just to,
you're saying you want this to happen this year?
this would happen this year.
Sorry, we have an issue opening a building and I had to step out.
And so, and then this is for the pay for performance. The grandfathered is a little bit different, but pretty much the same model. And so the grandfathered, because we weren't at 47.5 last year, the grandfathered schedule per the ridiculous Florida law said that they had to start at a lesser base than the teacher pay for performance. So they started at like 46.9. Even though really the only people on that schedule were teacher network managers that were grandfathering out through attrition anyway. But that schedule had to be less than the pay for performance. But now that we're at 47.5, a lot of those restrictions have lifted. And so what we're proposing to do is completely mirror the grandfather to the pay for performance, eliminate AAC, break up that AAC group, move those 21 teacher network managers that were on AAC down. There's 21 of them. And then so AAD grandfathered would be 47.5. And so the people that are currently on AAC grandfathered, if they are in years 1 through 3, they would move 2 levels down to AAE. 4 through 5 would move 3 levels down to AAF. 6 through 7 would move 4 levels to AAG. And this is grandfather schedule again. 8 through 9 would move 5 levels to AAH. 10 through 11 would move 6 levels down to AAI. And then 12 to 13 years would move down 7 to AAJ. And then everybody else in the grandfathered schedule after AAJ. So if they were sitting on AAD or down, they would move 7. And so with our grandfathered scheduled people, because those folks have been here with Polk the longest. And so giving them 7 and making that schedule equal also starts to address the inequities that those folks have experienced because of our short-sighted Florida legislature. And with some of these restrictive laws, and we can start to fix that for them. And then with the OTP SLI schedule, we have historically mirrored whatever we've done for the grandfathered schedule to the OTs and PTs and now the SLIs. And so we costed out the model to just move them all 7, move 7 levels, just like all the grandfathered people are moving. And then all 3 of those together is what I had talked about was the 8.4 or almost 8.5 million. So that was all 3 schedules together. And then now we have about 400,000 left. And instead of adding 180 to each pay level, like this document says, it sounds like from JD's calculations, we can add about $70 into the pay levels to use up all the money.
So this is not 180 anymore.
No, this based on JD's calculations last night. We're looking at $70 because of the increased FRS contribution that doesn't attribute from this raise. Because we have to pay for that too.
Stephanie, on your experience, is it outside and inside?
We pulled from outside and inside. It was whatever column. We were working off JD's spreadsheet. And so it was and he also added a year to account for finishing last year.
Okay.
So we added that year of experience. So that's the column we used. It wasn't just the Polk experience. We used all instructional experience to move the to start to break up that AAD. And then because again, years of experience is a very sticky kind of dumpster fire mess right now. Really not to anybody in this room's fault. It just is what it is. And I know that y'all are working to fix that with new systems in place and whatnot, but it just is what it is. And so it was going to be really hard for us to look at every single person's years of experience. And so what we did was we broke up the AAD, that base level, based on that 0 to 13 years of experience, because that was easier to look at. And then we just, whatever that last level moved, we just moved everybody else down. So instead of looking at each individual person's years of experience and trying to calculate that nightmare, because it will be a nightmare if we try to do it now. Now, it is something that we do need to clean up. And I know you guys are working on that.
I have some questions.
But that was the rationale there. It's just once we break up AAD, then everybody else on their existing level just moves down 6 or 7, depending on what schedule they're on.
So remember that a system is very, very linear. It is data in, data out.
Mhm.
That's all we're looking at. And the current system that we have is also very time-based. So when you input data, determines what calculations are made for holdbacks, for supplements, for FRS, for everything. So some of the questions I have in this would be, have you talked about setting boundaries so that this occurs over a year? Or what happens, like how the devil will be in the details. So are we going to do this at the end of a year for the next year? Is this happening in the middle of the year? Like this is what's going to kick our system into hyperdrive.
So traditionally, what we've done, and last year is actually the first year that we ratified a contract before the school year started. Usually what has happened is that we finish bargaining maybe September, October, November, Christmas,
May.
January, next May. Hopefully we never get to that point again. But we've settled contracts at varying points in the year, depending on what's on the table, what we need, what we have, whatever. And then what happens, and I'll go back to I think the first year Mr. Hyde was here, we settled like the paras and the ESPs, they were ratified in October and they had their raise, I think by Christmas that year. And so the board ratified October, like mid-October, and then the raises were loaded retroactively to July 1. And when I say retroactive to July 1, it's pretty much to all your 12-month employees get retroactive to July 1. Your
Started
the start of the fiscal year. And then your 11-month employees get retroactive to their first contract day, which, middle of July. And then your 10-month employees get retroactive to their first contract day, which is August 3rd or August 9th, depending on what pay group they're in. And then they calculate retro and then they start moving forward from the time that it's loaded. That's traditionally how it's been done.
I know that's also part of the problems we're having. Retro is a big problem. So that's why I'm just trying to plan out there so I can put it in there the right place. That's why I'm trying to wrap my head around it to make sure we don't add to problems. We can streamline them. So
But that's also why I think that like a multi-year salary agreement, even if people can see minimal movement, that way that you guys have time to plan that. And then it just happens July 1. And then when there's more money, or if there's more money, then we negotiate that. That helps the system, I think, holistically, so that we're not, we start eliminating a lot of the retro.
Okay.
Or massive retro anyway.
Well, let's be realistic too. We don't know what our funding is until the legislature wraps up their session. This year was late.
Mhm.
It was,
Next year will be early because it's an even year.
yeah. So, I mean, it's not, it's a multifaceted
Mhm.
issue on when that time period can begin.
No, agree.
No, I'm just,
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
it's,
Just explaining like the restrictions that we have of when these are.
I mean, it's not, has nothing to do with our budgeting, has nothing
Yeah.
to do with our time, a lot of it's just a lot of it's outside our control.
Yeah.
And then we scramble around to get things done as quick as we can.
But with multi budgeting, we may have the first year be a little bit of a mess for you because we'll have retro and whatnot, but thereafter, we would have it on a frame where we could be negotiating out and we could avoid that and people would know what they were going to be starting the new year at.
Yeah, it makes it difficult when we have no idea.
Is
I just want to put that out there. I mean, this year, we're budgeting a 5%. Our district is putting all of our funds we can into employee
I
compensation,
haven't touched it.
I'm gonna walk out.
18 days of reserve.
So one challenge is getting the system to calculate it. I'm just trying to make sure I understand. One challenge is looking at this and making sure that you look at all the data, reevaluating it. So we can predict what that would be for employees going forward. And then another challenge is there even any money to pay it? And when will we know that? Is that what we're saying?
Well, we have the pots of money we know what the pots of money are for this year. And so that's what you're seeing in front of you. We know that we have $9,715,000 for the TSIA. And I think if I remember correctly, it's like 5.6 or 5.7 of general fund for PEA allocated positions, which I guess we could divvy up however we want. But since we have the teacher increase allocation money, unlike some of the other employee groups, we'd rather spend the 5.6 or 7, whatever it is, on our 2 other contracts, since the teachers have this protected money that we have to spend on them.
And while we don't know what the budget is necessarily going to be from the state, we do know the time frame every year where we hear the budget from the state.
Yeah, I'm mostly worried about the system. So that's,
Sometimes we know by June we'll know,
Yes.
but we know, we really don't ever know the final piece till July 1st. Because actually, I'm sorry, it's July 19th, because by statute, they have until July 19th to tell us the actual millage. So that's our little bit of we're pretty close, but
Yeah.
we don't officially know until.
so let me go back into, again, the details. Are we saying that we would have time to work this up? And then we would let people know at the end of the year, this is how much you get. And
No, this is for this school year.
This year.
School year.
but here's my challenge. We have not gone in and done a scope of the system to see what it's going to do. And I want to be really clear. We have to have time to do our work. So I want to make sure if
We're not talking about, we're not talking about exactly when it's going to show up in paychecks right now.
Well, and we do.
that's my question.
Yeah, we're not
No,
talking.
no. This is just the model right now, but we do need, and I know we talked about this last year after kind of the lessons we learned last year when we had ratified early. We learned some lessons with that. And so making sure that it's communicated almost like a tentative agreement that we agree to when this is going to be paid with you guys on the system side input with Jenna, Tara, and
Let me tell you
And-
how we would do this on the system. So what we would do is we would take the entire system and we copy it over to something called a sandbox. We take everybody over there and we do all these calculations on the sandbox. We run the sandbox, we make the changes, we look at it, we compare the payrolls, we look at are the paychecks right? We make sure everybody that needs to look at it is looking at it. The same people that are doing that are the same people who are making sure we get paid now. That's the way we do something like this to make sure that we can get it function. We need time to do that. So that's what I'm trying to ask is how much time are we going to have to do this? Or is it going to be, okay, this is decided today and now payroll and HR and the SAP business analysts have to produce this in 4 weeks because you're going to put yourself back into where.
No. So there's a few things that need to happen. So like, if we were to sign on this today, which is actually a big if, because there's a few pieces in place that we still need, like
We need to go a little better.
we need to get with Jenna with placements to make sure that the placement schedule is right for new hires, and flesh that out. This is kind of just a working model, like me and JD sitting down, saying, this is our pot of money, kind of playing around. How do we divvy it up? Kind of thing. And it's kind of like the start of it. And so like, there's a lot of pieces still in place here that need to be done appropriately. Because again, we learned that last year because we were all, I think, very excited to get done so early. And then we didn't realize some of the pieces behind the scenes. And so we have learned from that. We do need to make sure that we're not implementing timelines that aren't realistic, because that's when mistakes are made. And then that's when employees lose trust in the process, right? Because they say, well, you should have paid me and it's not, or it's not right. Like, we want to make sure it's right. And so we're not necessarily, we're probably not TA on this. I wouldn't, there's still some pieces here. And even if we did, we have to have a whole tentative agreement because we got a lot of stuff still in limbo here. We have to go out to our bargaining unit to vote. Then the school board has to vote. And then once the school board votes, and I think traditionally, and chime in if I'm not correct in this, I think once we have a tentative agreement, what has started to happen on the personnel payroll side is that sandbox issue. They've started to play with it because it takes 15 days, 10 days at minimum for us to vote. And then it has to get on a board agenda and then the board votes. And so there's time and we can have a realistic timeline of when these things will be paid out. Now, what would be unrealistic or unacceptable, I think from us is we're not waiting until May or the end of the school year. Once we ratify this at the end of August or beginning of September, like our folks can't wait for this year's pay until next year.
Right. So let me clarify with this question then with that information. So what you would be looking for from me is if you were to go down this path, what would be a realistic timeline?
Yes.
And we need to start working on that.
Yes. So what would be a realistic timeline for personnel and payroll to implement this?
Okay.
And knowing that, and we haven't officially at this big table talked about ESP or para yet, but ESP and paras are going to have kind of a similar model to where we're trying to break up the compression and move people down the schedule. And so what would be a realistic timeline for that?
Okay.
So.
I was trying to find the contract language because I thought last time we did a clause in there that we would do it several months after or a time that would be determined by the chief of staff. I thought there was language we talked about in there. I thought so, or is that
For
is
raises,
that for the overs unders? Is that what?
that's for the over unders. That's for underpayments. Yeah.
But let me, if I may,
Go ahead.
to Ms. Pasco, I think the important thing too, and I'm so glad you're here, is so you see the front end of the programming and the
Yeah.
data pool.
Yeah.
And then we can work on the timeline being to make sure we can pull the data that we're talking about
Yeah.
to make things happen on the backside. So,
Well, and that's why when JD and I were first kind of digging into this yesterday, with the teacher spreadsheets, we thought it would be easier from a systems perspective to break up that first level and then just move everybody down the same. Because instead of, even though years of experience do need to be looked at and kind of unified in SAP, but that would be a way to get this done a little bit quicker, is if we broke up that group and just said, hey, you're moving this, you're moving this, you're moving this.
Yeah, the other challenge we have is, and I've learned that this year, is it depends on all the other programs that have been built in Polk County and how you're addressing the database tables. Because what's happened is a lot of these tables have been used to build other programs. So we need to investigate that too, to make sure not breaking something else when we change it. So we just need to go do a deep dive so we know what we're getting into.
Well, that's why we wanted you here today, because we knew we were going to be talking about this. And so because we do want, both sides want realistic timeline, because it doesn't do any of us here any good to agree to this amazing thing and then it not be realistic to implement, or the timeline's not realistic. And then everybody's frustrated. And then that's when more mistakes happen. And so we don't want to have that happen.
When will this topic come back up?
It'll probably come up the next time we meet, because
Do we know when that is?
we'll need to get dates once we're done. But it probably with pre-planning, I know that we're all running around like crazy people during pre-planning, and so are all of our folks. So it'll probably be sometime after school starts where we'll be able to formally come back.
All right.
But there's some of the stuff we can work on either in little committees or behind the scenes as we're.
the number.
And I know JD sent me some spreadsheets because he had broken out some of the paras and ESPs, and I'm going to start looking at that too. We started looking at that with the secretaries, with school-based secretaries, financial registrar and principal secretaries, but looking at that and pulling that data for everybody else to see that first level and then breaking that up. And so that's going to be happening, in between our next meetings.
Any other questions?
I mean, and my team just saw, because we just worked on this yesterday. We worked up on this last night. And so my teams also saw it for the first time this morning. And I know you guys are seeing it kind of for the first time. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or clarifying any things?
I don't have any questions. I just had a remark on what I had to kind of figure out on my own.
Mhm.
So if somebody reads this after the fact. The grandfather, you notice where it says move 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's all in sequence.
Mhm.
I kind of had to go back and I circled it because I was going to ask the question, but then I later figured it out that, for example, we moved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 levels down through AA. Well, the 12 to 13 level there.
Mhm.
And I kept wondering, oh, well, they must have messed up because that should be move 7, move 8, move 9, but it's not.
No,
So if that was the only point I had to really seek to understand, but I figured it out was, for example, if you're an AAE, then you go F, G, H, I, J, K, you know what I mean?
yeah,
So if this goes on for presentation later,
Yeah.
people might think, oh, you just, I don't know.
no. And that's why I did the little dot, 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 so that the pattern kind of continues.
Made sense after I figured. it out.
Yeah. And there's a difference in the pay for performance eventually all moves 6 levels and the grandfathered moves eventually all 7 because of that AAC. We're getting rid of that AAC, just making everybody start at 47.5. But that means people on AAC had to move to AAE.
So we went from one level to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, so the grandfathered would move
I
7.
mean, that's progress.
Yeah. And for the grandfathered people, without the $70 added into the level, the grandfathered people, because $370 right now is in between each level. That's about $2,200 for our grandfathered teachers.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
There's a timeline. What is the process that everyone's using to determine years of experience? Are you taking what's in the system or are you reevaluating that?
Right now, we took what was in the system for instructional outside of Polk and Polk experience, because there's a column that was pulled and that's what we use to break up AA.
So this is going to be an important for you all to talk about. Within any system, there is oftentimes data that people will question and ask if it needs to be reevaluated. I think for your timeline, it's important to determine, are you going to make a decision? And then if someone questions that pay based upon years of experience, there is an appeal process so that you let the system keep going for multiple people while you address the appeal process, or are you going to come back? Because I need to know what you're going to do. That's how we run into those off-cycle check problems. So we need to know how you're going to address those things.
Make sure I'm understanding correctly. So the way this is laid out is based on what's already in the system,
Correct.
right?
Based on information. from the
They-
state,
yeah.
Whether or not that's accurate or not.
And we need to know that for timelines, how you're going to address
So if I,
perceived discrepancies. I'm not saying there any are, but I'm saying that's what we run into.
so if I call you up and I say, I think I've been being paid wrong, you paid me, you moved me to step or level 15 and I believe I should be on level 18. Is what you're asking, how we would deal with that?
Yes, what I'm basically proposing that you consider is, what the challenge we have right now is we need the system to keep running, right? For all of our people, we need the system to keep running. We don't doubt that there will be questions and exceptions, but having maybe 2 different timelines of the system keeps running. If you have a question about, if I have a question to JD about, I don't think this is correct based upon what we've done, we keep running the system so you get paid, but we then also have a parallel system that's evaluating that and seeing what you need to do. Right now, what we have is I'm getting paid. It has to be completed 100% before the next paycheck cycle, and that's what's causing some of the problems.
But are you anticipating, Stephanie, still? It's always been a case by case basis,
Yeah.
you know, because, you know,
It is.
Well, and I think-
Case basis.
And I think with this, and we're just kind of, because I don't know the intricacies of the system, so I'm just trying to think through my head what might work best. And so my thinking is that if this is tentatively agreed to at whatever point, and we decide the time frame in which the raises are gonna hit, you know, their paychecks, whether it's the end of October, November, whatever, whenever, don't know. Because we're not quite there yet. But you load based on the information we have, right? And because that's all we have to pull from, right? Is what the information we have in SAP based on their years of experience for that first level.
Correct.
And then once it's done, I would say if an employee thinks that it's incorrect, then after it's done, then maybe that's when reviews are opened. And then it would be retro if it is wrong. Let's say, you know, after Jenna's team evaluates it and they say, oh yeah, you know, you do have 2 more extra years somewhere. Then that's when it would be just for that individual, probably retro back.
And now what if they also want to submit outside experience that's never been submitted?
Well, we already have contract language to address that.
Absolutely.
So they can't get that retroed. I mean, that's already, unless they're within their 90-day period.
Receipt.
Well, here's when we receive the.
Well, yeah, it would go from the time that they received it, unless they're within their 90-day first hire, then it would be retro. But we already have contract language to address that.
Stephanie, if I may. So I was just talking to Wilfredo. My existing portal experience is 2 years out of date. I addressed it last year prior to you joining us. And she told me at that time, well, somebody has to go in there and manually change it.
Yes.
So if you're pulling information for salaries based on this, you don't
That's-
have an
That's
accurate.
what we're saying. It's not accurate. We know it's not accurate.
But that's also why I'm trying to, here's the challenge
Using that.
that I'm trying to ensure that we do.
Good.
We as educators look at workload, and we typically look at workload based upon how many students we have. We need to be careful when we make these decisions, because if you compare students to the number of staff members that might have incorrect data, we get ourselves into trouble when we plan as if we have unlimited resources and we don't. So I'm trying to give us a purposeful plan so that everyone is set up for success, so that they know through these processes,
Mhm.
if my paycheck is incorrect, while I'm still getting the pay, because we don't want anybody not to get paid.
Yeah.
We don't want to stop the system so no one gets paid. While I'm still waiting to get paid, I understand the reasonable expectations that have been agreed upon
Yeah.
on how that will get resolved,
No, I agree.
especially based upon a volume that we might see. We don't know when you start messing with the system and you go back and you look at data, to your point, we don't know what this data looks like. So I'm just trying to get us to where your team is not put under the gun of something needs to be fixed tomorrow.
Yeah.
Our team is not put on that, because when we do that, we create problems for ourselves, because then we create anxiety, and the people doing the work now make more mistakes. So that is what I'm trying to ensure that we are purposeful about in however we make this decision.
Well, and knowing that the system has limitations right now and what the limitations are.
Yes, ma'am.
I also, I think we need to have people understand we can't let the perfect get in the way of the good here. Like, we know that there are limitations with the years of experience, and they're being addressed, but we also need to move forward with breaking up the compression. And so that's why when JD and I looked at that yesterday, we really felt that moving the existing levels would be probably the easiest thing this year, because we can look at years of experience in the compressed level in AAD or AAC and then kind of break that up, but it's not breaking up the entire unit. We're looking at just that one level, breaking it up, moving them down, and then just if I'm on, and I think I'm on AAM. So if I'm on AAM, I know that I'm just going to move 6 levels down to whatever that is,
Mhm.
you know, and then that's where I'm going to land. And so doing that this year, as we are auditing and fixing and evaluating those years of experience in SAP moving forward so that it's cleaner, but this year having something that starts to break that up, but that's not, I don't think, unmanageable.
Right. Typically, when you do anything Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and that does. And I think going into knowing what the limitations were, I think at least our side was aware that that's just what a limitation is.
If I'm not concerned about looking at the system, I'm not concerned about running the sandbox, I'm not concerned about providing information for everyone. I am concerned about putting us into an unrealistic timeline for things we didn't think through. I just want us to be able to talk.
Well, that's why when we get to that point, when we're ready to TA, you know, making sure that you and Tara and Jenna are making sure that you guys are here as we're creating realistic timelines for this.
I'm not gonna stress over.
If they don't use that screen.
You can,
It's nice to know they don't use that screen, but.
Not for that purpose.
we're gonna we're working on the portal.
So
Feedback or questions on the
you
presentation?
like it, hate it?
Oh.
Oh, no.
I think it makes sense.
Okay,
I don't have any questions
okay,
personally.
okay. All right. All right. Good job, JD. High five. High five across the table.
Now, if my.
There we go.
Work.
We might need to ask more questions, right? Okay, do we want to pull up? I know we had in our first meeting kind of talked about the secretary, school-based FSRS, and the principals, which is like 80% of our secretary contract. Do we want to pull that back up and revisit that? Or do we want to wait until the next time? And I know that was just kind of an off-the-cuff question, since we were talking salaries.
Is it in a place where it's gonna, is it refined enough to make it worthwhile to look at, I guess? is my-
Well, it's yeah, I think, it's what the small committee worked on, I think, June 2nd. As we were looking at the ladder, when we were starting to move them for July 1. But then we started looking at the model to break it up when poor Curtis was here all by himself and everybody else was virtual.
You didn't get the memo.
Like 10 or 13 levels.
Yeah, I think we landed on like 13. Yeah. Do we want to bring that up or do we want to wait or tackle maybe some, because we have what, 2 hours?
Yeah, so the priority, bringing it up to see if it works, just like we talked. about.
Yeah.
Because this group hasn't seen the sub work.
I don't know if they have. So let's bring it up. Okay.
The team hasn't seen the sub work either, right?
No, you guys saw it.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys saw it when we,
That's this,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah, you guys have seen it.
Right.
Grids of the.
But I wanted,
Yeah.
that's what I guess I was.
Yeah, you guys saw it back in the beginning of June.
The Rate of pay changes.
Yeah. I'll pull that up.
That's why. When she said, let's just look at.
Superintendent's conference.
Yeah, yeah.
On a totally unrelated note, while you're doing that, Carrie Barkman says our language was good.
Oh, perfect.
It addressed her issues.
Awesome. You have this or do you want me to send it to you? Just so you can have it at the top of your,
Send it to me, please. Send it to Laura and Karen.
well, I think they have it. I just wanted it to be at the top of your email.
I would have
If you want to look at it, I'll do that.
for it.
I'll send it to you guys just so it's at the top of your email.
Thank you.
Probably only a couple thousand emails since then.
Oh, no, me too. I hear you there.
I'm not exaggerating.
Heather. But here we are now. I think I got all of this, guys.
Email.
You need some?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, fridge, go, help yourself. Well, oh no, help yourself, please.
We have water.
There's only one person,
You'll have folks over here all the time.
yeah, there's only one person that's not allowed to be in our fridge.
It's too-
They're not here today.
It's $2.
Maybe we
That's okay.
should get badges.
That was intentional.
Badges the people we want to hear.
Thought you were gonna
Right?
add just for the fridge.
So it is 50 cents.
I think we just don't want them in the building.
We don't, what were we talking about? He likes badge. All right.
And I can.
All right, it's being sent over to you guys now.
Really? Oh, so I
I mean,
haven't.
it's probably gonna be our next state representative.
If you feel so black, you should probably get the air conditioner again.
You know, I was starting, it's 71 though. I was starting to get a little like this. Let's bump it down. Let's go. I can't. Let's do two degrees.
I've been in my.
2 degrees. I'm feeling it. Now, Brian, I'm starting to sweat now.
I can't believe I'm saying.
1 degree.
One.
And on top of that, he'll never get my vote.
You know,
And anybody else I can influence.
1 degree that. I just want the system to work so that
Did you guys get it?
things that truly impact.
No,
Okay.
it was just, I just remarked to him that
Let me know when you got it. I sent it to
that we never
all of you guys, just so it's at the top of your email.
involved and we know personnel's involved and all these people that we get. But this is the first time, I think, to have the really solid understanding of how much IT actually involved in the process. That rock your world.
Okay.
The unrealistic, of course, and
You guys got it yet?
nobody consults us when they make our signs either, but it's a system of. So it's good to hear.
Things. And we want to, but it's gonna take a lot to do.
Not yours.
It's definitely.
Okay, I sent it.
Had JD. Oh,
When you think about
another one.
it,
I don't have it either.
opportunity to have if we ran a business, move our business somewhere else and we'd make it work while we fix.
Oh,
Yeah,
sent me stuff.
yeah, did that. And
I
that's,
was just gonna, you know, there.
Prince Williams 01.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
are 2 of us,
Mhm.
yeah.
I sent it to you guys too, just so it's at the top of your email, so you didn't have to fish for it. The secretary from 6-2. Here, I'll send it to Kevin, and Kevin, can you plug your computer into that? No, you can't. You don't have badge?
Broadcast to the TV.
Okay. Oh, I can do that. I always forget I can do that. Yes, I always forget I can. Like, you might have to help me.
And we get the numbers.
Yeah, they can.
And you realize.
Game is on right now.
Oh my, oh, that's might be Zane.
happens in
Zane watches TV in here in the afternoon.
payroll
No,
spits out what's in the system. Which is also why you heard me. Minutes put in the
I
system.
didn't know they have service like that.
That's,
They have a,
that's the challenge.
Service like
I think
that.
about too.
yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think
Must be for.
you should be
You don't have, you shouldn't have to do anything. She can-
very.
Who's doing it? You or her?
Me,
I don't know. I haven't.
I'm trying.
not yet.
IT person told us
Yeah,
that I was a social studies teacher. I'm go back and put the job for fact.
you don't want people to count?
We're not that.
That's not what I said.
Security by 4.
Trying to get somebody in trouble.
Oh, it's my account.
Oh.
Yeah, I have her Max, and also Disney.
Because we're family and we share.
Did you see that?
Well, I had to get the extra Netflix now because
They don't let you share anymore.
they won't want sharing anymore. So
Not sure.
That
if
is-
it's for Hulu.
There, I read an article that was very, very serious about like, that is the new way to gauge relationships is whether or not you are willing to integrate your.
Technology.
Netflix and things like that.
That's heavy.
That's pretty fierce.
Right.
It's not.
Well, the one that freaks me out is go to
got that right.
Airbnb and someone else has left in their Netflix logged in. I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that.
I travel with a Roku. And so I just pull it in and out. And it's literally just for travel.
Oh,
Yeah, that's that.
But you know, that's the student data thing. Now I go and your Netflix is open and I can do anything I want.
Why? It's probably because
You.
oh, because he's connected. So Kevin, you're gonna have to put it up. So I'll send it to you just so you don't have to find it.
My process for one. I would get on to students all the time because they would come down for like makeup testing or whatever, log in.
And they'd leave them.
Like,
Don't do that.
guys have got to log out.
I know.
If you're lucky it was me.
Yeah, it's not letting me project.
I'm sending an email to
Hardwired in.
under your.
I have to send it to him.
Until they get in trouble for something they do.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you bring my YouTube back?
Did I? Oh, yes. Student emailed me. Whoever turned the district, turned the YouTube off, turn it back on.
No, yeah, I was just
The whole district.
email the entire district office.
They would find your email and.
And then, well, it was the whole district office and everybody's emailing me, Ms. Pasco. Can you help this poor child? I was like, no, the school turned it off, so.
Oh my gosh.
School has access to that.
You're protecting that, right?
We have some smart
Yeah,
kids.
just waiting for it.
Another one got on and impersonated their principal.
I just sent it.
Yeah.
That is hysterical. Can you please unblock blah, 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 Roblox? Because my students need it for a brain break. And we called- Yeah, they called the principal. He's like, I didn't do that. It's like, oh, okay.
Get verbiage and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah.
I can see some of our children doing.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So Kevin has it projected up on the TV. And so what we were playing around with in the subcommittee was starting to, because there's so many pay grades in the two support staff contracts right now. And they have now, with the compression that's happened over the last couple of years, they don't have the same number of levels anymore. And so some have 8 levels, some have 12, some have 20. It's all over the place. And so with that, with the compression now has come different years of experience placement for new hires. So each pay grade has its own placement schedule now. And so it's very hard to see, especially existing employees, like if they're a basic para and then they're maybe moving to a center school, because the pay grades are not the same number of levels. It's hard to know unless, they're in contact with personnel of where they're actually going to go and how they're going to get paid and what their difference is going to look like, because each pay grade has its own placement schedule and they're not published, at least in the contract. They're housed with personnel right now. And so part of what we were jointly wanting to look at is making the pay grades and the support staff contracts the same as far as the number of levels they have. And then making sure that, as we're breaking up the compression, that the placement schedules are also the same, so that if you're on a PGO4 as a switchboard operator, and then maybe you're going to move to a property auditor in PGO8, you're literally taking, like, if you're on level B, you're going to move to level B there too, because it's the same years of experience and exactly what your pay raise would be. And so that's the goal here now, is to really clean up these schedules as we're now at the state minimum of 15. And so as the committee group was working, we had played around with some different numbers of levels and we kind of landed on 13. It seemed to be the best. We looked at 10, but then 10 didn't really work in some of the pay grades, but 13 seemed to be the magic number of pay levels. And so we worked up some potential models to start costing out of what the support staff pay grades might look like. Also, we would re-letter them one more time for them to all start at A. Because right now they all start at different letters because of the way they were lopped off to compress. And so we want to do a renumbering one more time so that they all start with A and end with M. Oh, my watch just said, great move, because I moved my arm. Anyway, sorry.
Because when we collect.
And so we tested this out, we tested this out in the secretary contract with the school-based secretaries, the financial registrar secretaries, and the principal secretaries, because there was a patch that needed to happen before we moved school-based secretaries to registrars or financial secretaries July 1. And about 80% of our secretaries are in these 3 pay grades. And so that would be kind of a good measure to see about what this would cost. And so we wanted to remind everybody and put this up. And we did discuss it in the first bargaining when we were in the superintendent's small conference room, but we didn't have any way to really project it. And so we're still costing this out holistically of what this would look like in the secretaries, the rest of the secretary pay grades, and then applying this into the para contract pay grades. So we're not quite ready. We're not really ready to present the other pay grades and the para contract and the other secretary pay grades. But we wanted to make sure that you guys can kind of see our potential plan. And this does include a 3-year plan to break up the compression. And so potentially what we could look at for 23-24 is school-based secretary M would be relettered to A all the way down. And then the first level will be for 0 years of experience. So that's somebody coming in that has no experience whatsoever would be placed on A. And then years 1 through 10 would be placed on B. But now we need to remember, if you look at what's currently going on, currently 0 to 21 years of experience are compressed into the first level. And so that's pretty significant. So I know 1 to 10 years sounds like a lot in the first level, but we have to start breaking it up somehow. And it can't all happen in 1 year because we don't have enough money to do that. And so this has to be a multi-year, us breaking this up so that we can fix this. And so with 0 to 21 years being compressed into that first level now, we want to first start by 1 to 10 being broken up into that first level, potentially 11 to 15, the next level, 16 to 20, 21 to 22, 23 to 24, and then 25 down to 31 plus to start. While maintaining the same actual money amounts in the levels. Now, and when we were playing with this, we actually didn't have the finalized pot of money. Now we know we have about $5.7 million to play around with here. And so this might even, this could change even from them because we might be able to break it up more. Maybe we leave it the same, but then also add money in. And so there's a few things now that could potentially change here now that we have the actual pot of money that we're working with. So,
You guys, I mean, so does that breakup, seem adequate for you guys? Ryan, or whoever?
To me, when I looked at it earlier.
And this would be the only employee group you would address other than the teachers in 23-24 because of your pot of money.
No. We would do this would be all of our folks. This was just what we had started to work out with the model.
Gotcha.
So we haven't applied this to the other pay grades yet.
That's fine.
We'd use the same concept.
Yeah, we would then use this model and use the same concept for the other pay grades.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, because when we were together, we had 2 goals when we were together in like late May, early June. We had to get the patch for the move to the financial registrar secretary. And then we figured while we were together, we would start to work out some models. But that was before we had the final number for the general fund that we would have for us.
Gotcha.
And so this could change. We could be able to, decompress it more. We may be able to add more money in, or we may have to scale it back. And so JD and I will be sitting down again together and separately to kind of finish out this, but we wanted to bring this up again since we were here and we could project it. And so that people could see what we were thinking. And so right now what you're seeing is just for the school-based secretaries, but we would want the same model for all the other pay grades in the 2 contracts for para and ESP. So that's where we're looking and costing that out.
That's a good agreement.
Yeah. So we're not gonna, because it's messy when we start to cost out. So we won't do that at the table and do that. We can be more productive with our time. JD and I can sit and do the messiness and then bring it back to you guys. But we did want to show that since we were talking about the teacher salaries so that the support staff could see what we were actually looking at. So we have about an hour and a half. Brian, what would you like to look at or continue to discuss?
Go back to the language.
Yeah, we can go back to language.
Okay.
You want to do the para and ESP salaries and compensation articles? Or do you want to go to the para and ESP appendix? Okay.
Let me get my agenda out here and see where.
Oh, yeah, you didn't touch it. The appendices might be easier.
So let's just, I'll talk out loud and you can look at your.
Okay.
We have two TAs we put together today.
Mhm.
The payroll deduction, all of that, we withdrew. I might be speaking out of turn. I did get an email back from Dan on the weightlifting thing,
Can't hear you.
the size that they were looking for.
Okay.
I'll put that in the next proposal.
So
And I did hear
15
back from Dan Talbot. 15 was the threshold that he and Tracy Collins kind of worked out.
Okay, 15 kids, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said not 14, 15. They have 14 are not eligible. So. Yeah, we'll-
15 or more.
Mhm.
Okay,
So appendix C is, we're gonna follow back up on that.
okay,
I do have some MOUs we can do toward the end. So
Okay.
Let's keep about 15 minutes out for that.
They just don't make the team.
no, they have a head coach. That's adding an assistant coach.
Assistant coach, thank you.
It's a threshold.
I thought it was for head coach. I
No,
thought it was just-
no.
Adding an assistant coach to.
All right.
It was based on the size and the safety piece, and the breaking point seems
That makes sense. for
15.
And I thought we
Yeah.
talked said.
We can be safe with 14, but with 15, we need,
15.
yeah,
Need another one.
it's a different ballgame. Okay. So you were saying, oh,
Do you want to do the para and ESP?
sure, because you've got a union proposal on ESP 12, right?
Yes,
You want to do that?
yeah, we can do that.
Now this is, there's us. Well, and then we've got ESP 15
Yeah, we both do.
and 12. So
And we
let's
both
go.
have,
You want to hand them all out at the same time?
yeah, I might as well.
So let's go there.
He's asking which- Here.
Are we going to go?
ESP. ESP.
We're,
12 and 15.
we're not going back to appendix C today for teachers. So, yeah,
And
not today.
definitely.
They're doing some.
I'm
Yes.
gonna go ahead and hand out each 12 and 15. You didn't have. to.
Thank you. Yeah,
You did, okay.
Sorry.
You want to do them singularly, do 12 and then do 15.
let's do 12 first. That might be easier.
Do 12, Karen. Leave. Article 12, ESP. That's benefits, education reimbursement. Actually, that's not ours, that's theirs.
You don't, okay, all right. No, no,
Yeah.
no.
Sorry.
It's
That was
okay.
the one we were talking about this morning.
There we go.
I'm-
Is 3 copies. So the last time we met, you guys accepted the 12.4 edition or 14 edition with the greenhouse project. And that was just straight up copied from para 9.3. And then there was the discussion, and some of this discussion was in the ESP when we were talking about the appendix C as well, with their instructional supplements, their non-instructional supplements. And so I believe what we landed on and what you'll see it on page 6 of 6 is I had made notes that we had put this in the appendix, but I think it might be more appropriate in this article. Is it support staff micro-credential committee that we had workshopped together? It says a joint committee will convene for the 23-24 school year to create a support staff micro-credential program and continue to review job descriptions with the expectation of having a resolution by 24-25 school year. Because we had talked about the training piece and making sure that ESPs were getting the training they needed and that they wanted, and that they felt that they needed to do their job. And also what you guys were seeing from the manager side of what they needed. So doing a committee to create that micro-credential committee so that we could start building meaningful training and educational incentives in to the ESP positions. And so, and I left this highlighted piece in because it did say district response holding pending research. And so were you guys able to do further research on this that you were bringing back, or? And I left that in because we had that question.
I'm gonna go I'm gonna get back to that last one. Were you off of this, the micro credential subcommittee?
Mhm.
I agree. We talked about all
Yeah.
that. All right.
Existing
Resolution.
training.
Is it a resolution or is it like,
I guess a resolution would be like a plan. I think that was just the word we used.
yeah,
Figure out what
to review job descriptions with the expectation of having
another two.
plan?
Like having a plan, like a resolution.
Or again.
And I don't know if we want to use the word resolution, but like the intent, I think, is to have a plan moving forward. Like, how are we going to implement this?
Recommendation.
A recommendation. Yeah, I like that better.
Okay,
Resolution is like a legal thing.
Yeah. I'm okay with recommendation. I think that was just the word we used.
The recommendation is the PD. It's the, how do you get to hear that?
Yeah.
How you do your job better? How are you?
Okay.
how are you better trained? I get it.
Okay. Yeah, we're okay with that.
Stephanie?
Yeah.
Brian, I've seen that once before, just to let you know, something to consider. You need to decide if that's a face-to-face or a digital training, and if it's digital, do you allow it to be done during the workday?
Will convenes clear support program to continue.
I think that those are parameters that the committee can look at
Right.
Okay.
when we meet. We don't have to have it in language, but those are, and those are very good needed discussion points of what that looks like.
And in the para, it was after the duty day.
Yeah,
That is typically what I have seen.
yeah.
Because it's a
The
double.
para academy is after their duty day.
Yeah.
They're participating in PD after their duty day, and they are getting like a $200 added to their base pay
Correct.
for that, once they complete 30 hours of their
Correct. Typically,
thing.
I've seen for the digital piece is it's either after the duty day or
Yeah.
you verify that it was done during non-paid time, like a duty-free lunch or a planning period or whatever. And again, I'm not as familiar with the contract, but then that does typically run into some challenges because then the IT department has been asked to verify that.
Mhm.
So,
I think we have a really good model that's working with the para academy, and I think that we were going to try to mirror a lot of that with the district PD.
that makes it simple.
Yeah,
Makes it real.
I'm trying to figure.
yeah. So, okay, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was going to go to the committee. So we're just doing the job descriptions or are we?
It becomes.
So this would look at like,
PD in there.
like PD, like this would be for their micro credentials. This would be separate from reviewing job.
Timestamp is during the duty day.
Like, we're already doing that. We're already reviewing job descriptions as in groups as we look at them.
I'm just looking because we said,
I'm sick.
Oh, it does say and job descriptions.
Yeah, it's-
Sorry, no, thank you.
So it should be,
Yeah.
it should be recommendations.
And I don't know, like.
yeah, we changed that already.
Yeah.
This was because we talked about,
Technically, when you're on leave.
there are some jobs that like their job descriptions are no longer encompass what really is required, and those ones that do require some of this more advanced training, then we might need to move them into a different job description. once
I
they
don't
receive
mind
it.
leaving JDs in there. I just
I'm okay with that.
add PD
And that.
or whatever.
Oh my.
Yeah.
it Was,
You know.
because it
So,
looks like
yeah.
we started.
Yeah. So to support staff my credential program and continue to review job descriptions
And professional,
and professional development.
yeah.
Okay, so. Okay,
I'll take, and then,
with the expectation of having recommendations
yeah.
by the 24-25 school year. Okay, so going back to the highlighted piece that you guys had highlighted last time that said was on hold pending research. I left that in there because we didn't get to talk about that because I was in your counter on the 26th. And this language mirrors the para academy language.
Give me just a minute.
Yeah, no problem.
I now know what we had to follow up on this for.
Okay,
I'm still not ready to sign it
okay,
because of what I gotta follow up on. Because what I think I remember is over in PD, we have the training that's set up and built inside the system for the paras.
mhm,
And I don't think we even have anything for ESP if we walked it across. And so that's why.
They're creating it right now. They're actually in the middle of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
that's what it was. That was the holdup.
So
Sure
then,
The system could even accommodate it right now.
gotcha. So with knowing that they're in the middle of that and they're probably not gonna be done by the time we're actually ready to agree and ratify. What we might what we might want to do, if they are already in the middle of the school year, we can either
Do an MOU.
do an MOU if we are ready to launch and ready to go, or we can, knowing that we have this committee, that's kind of part of this committee.
Yep.
And then we can add it in the 23 or 24, 25
I'd
school
like
year.
to strike this
Okay,
and then when it's done and PD,
Okay.
with the ESP ready to go, do the MOU and we go.
okay. Well, then let's do that. So let's strike this, knowing that that's already in the works and that when they're done,
Do you know an ETA on that or anything?
I do not, actually, honestly, because the talks I've had with, they were actually kind of saying if this was gonna go.
It would be nice to have that committee drive
Yeah,
a little.
well, yeah.
yeah, that, and I think I actually, I mean, I hate to like, hurt our own position on this, but I think that was that last little thing about the committee, is kind of addressing this part right here.
Okay.
That's like,
Because we're actually like doing this symbiotic thing right now where they're hoping that they have this incentive to help. We're wanting to get the incentive in to push
Okay.
them to that.
and Heather, we can get some of your team too to help drive the material that would need to go toward those 4 new ESP JDs as well. That would be meaningful.
Okay.
We could get, we can get the representation and all that put together for the subcommittee.
So I'll pull up 12 now.
And then that brings us to where we need to be.
Yep, and I'll delete that and then make the change.
And while you're doing that,
Okay.
I'm gonna talk to her. Help us not lose that and wait to the last minute. So
Absolutely.
we need to be meeting at a minimum each 9 weeks, you know what I mean, to get to the end of the year and get where we need to be, if not more.
Absolutely.
I would recommend as we go ahead and just get a group established, which we could do on a Teams meeting or we could do that now.
Yeah.
And then we just get 4, at least 4 appointments scheduled and done.
I like it. And Maria Diaz is is my district contact. We're the ones who work together on the Para Academy.
Mhm.
And I know that she's the one who I know is starting this. So I would hope that
Okay.
and then I'm not sure who else we'll have. I'm
Yes.
excited that.
We will have but there are so many priorities going on.
Yeah.
And so somebody's got to be watchdog on this.
Yeah.
Oh, I
So
have no.
that
problem.
happens.
She's good at that.
Getting those dates already out there and then we can just,
If you tell me anybody who you definitely want on it,
let me confer behind the scenes with Heather.
then I'll work that out.
Because, she worked a lot on that ESP piece as well. And so we can,
And we need that.
and the representative on the specific type of job.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, and we need the contact with the ESP training with what we have. All of our ESPs are begging for PD from both sides. So, yeah.
Can you curious?
And to that end, we made it through the transition. So this year, let's work on the training.
Yeah. And we're adding in, so to support staff micro credential program and continues to review job descriptions and professional development. Having recommendations. I'm gonna say committee recommendations.
I don't want to continue to drag this out in the labor, but where are we going to present our recommendations? What are we going to do with them?
I guess it'll come to the table,
Right?
right? It would,
But we said we needed PD to get started right away. So we would go into an MOU and then bring it back later.
yeah.
Yeah, I think to remember, because this is actually Mr. Hyde's,
Right.
One of the conversations. That was kind of the thing is before we keep attaching things to it, he just wants to be very specific in what professional development.
And I say what we build in subcommittee, we embed in the MOU and we walk it across
Yeah.
later. That's
I
done.
agree. I'm saving it in the right place. If I don't save it in the right place now, it'll
No.
mess me up later.
That's why everything's on my desktop. I think we have more than like 50, 60 files on their desktop except,
No, that is insane. That's insanity.
but I have folders. Files on my
I
desk.
saw Jason's computer and I about had an
You all
aneurysm.
to come see it. What I do once a month is just copy it over to another It says adjust.
You're a file
I
hoarder.
am, I am not.
I see down here is.
Monitors to see all of his stuff on his screen.
Copy and. That's
I'm
how.
glad that I fixed that right.
Glad to.
So.
I do like that double monitor setup though.
That makes them happy.
Got it right. Here. Doesn't see on it.
Here he is.
Desktop, his desktop is labeled.
You got an ESP 15 there.
Does he not know?
Put them in folders. He gets in a hurry.
I have.
Actually, can we talk about teacher six? There's a compensation piece that we're bringing that we had emailed to you guys about split classroom for substitute teaching.
Yeah, actually.
That's not his issue.
Okay, so let's move to teacher six.
Let's see what we got.
For the same.
We're gonna do a TA here for you.
Yeah, I'm printing it now.
That's good. I think you.
Update it and just change stuff.
And I just printed the one page because it's just this one page at six.
Shortcut.
For him.
Yeah, let's go ahead and hand out our six.
I keep.
Um,
Flash drive.
Yeah, you have one.
Yeah, I'm gonna print this.
I got one somewhere.
That's the one. Handout.
Okay. This is there.
There.
Okay.
Oh, boy. I
This
can't
is,
take
this is theirs.
Okay.
You got it.
first. Thank you. Did I fill out this one?
Gotta make notes, so I don't want to start angry.
Here.
All right.
You need a copy of this?
She already has that.
Oh, you have one? Okay.
I don't know, maybe. That's.
Mine's the full one.
Here, there. No, I don't have this.
Oh, you covered.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh.
I just, I didn't count.
One quick thing. As soon as you got it, you're fine.
We just had it.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, buddy.
That's in there. Marion, can you attach the attendance sheets to those other two TAs? Here. Here's the attendance sheet that need to be attached to the other
Yes.
two TAs.
Yes.
Or I guess you only need two copies. You don't need four.
You typically put them on the back.
Put them on the back, yeah.
On the back.
Keep the other ones and we're fixing another one.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Or actually, never mind. I changed my mind. Give them back. So I'll just staple them. Sorry.
What's
No, give me two. Because you have two and Marion has two.
one?
Marion, give me two of those attendance sheets back, please. Sorry. I didn't need to give you all four.
Here's two. I was just gonna say, I only have two
Right.
proposals.
One, two.
Here. Open them back. Did it, Frank Cat? Did it, Brent? I hate this copier so much.
Renew.
Oh, I kept our old Rizzo. I miss it so much.
I guess we're not renewing that contract.
They were snake oil salesmen.
And some of our
You gonna
machine.
yay anything else today? Yeah, we're doing teacher six after we sign ASP 12. And then we've got some MOUs to wrap up the day. And then we'll look at calendars. Okay, so we're doing this one. Did you get this time?
About the. I'm out. 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
It'll have to be after school
It's gonna be
starts.
driven by the school calendar, really.
Yeah.
I probably.
And I
Yeah.
kind of, I know I can speak for Stephanie, but we want to get this done sooner than
We do.
But one, to the window of rules of engagement have changed. Because then you're pulling people out of their
Yeah.
classes with their new kids and orient.
So we probably will try to do more late afternoon evenings if we can. Just to try to punch this through and then maybe do some smaller committee work to prep our time once teachers are back and staff are back.
Do you want to move on into 6?
Yeah, let's do that while that's printing, just so we can utilize the time.
Our time wisely.
Yeah, I agree.
So
So,
you handed yours out.
yes, do you have
Got
yours?
Mine, I think.
I don't have yours.
Here, I'll give you my copy. Basically, mine is a strike through of yours.
Okay.
You have,
That's where that's at.
can I borrow you?
But I want to give some narrative to the strike through. not
Okay.
Just as a, like,
Oh, I don't get anything.
just because.
Yeah,
I don't feel like we need this language. With specificity of the absence in ASOP in quantifying the 10 students and establishing the rate of pay. Again, you heard me talk about levels and layers and load on the system. This is more.
mhm,
And I'm going to go back to what is in letter C above, letter C above this, which says classroom teachers may volunteer to cover classes. During their planning period, teachers will be compensated at their regular hourly rate of pay for the equivalent of their school's scheduled planning period. And it goes on to talk further in there. Another note I made for discussion is
mhm.
10. I think 10 is like low unless you have, I don't know what kind of special class, section or course or otherwise. Most classes are 18 or higher. Further, you could be in a secondary application with 22, 25.
Mhm.
So I just feel like it's best to strike the language as letter C.
So the rationale that we had for presenting this language was that knowing that, especially knowing that Mr. Hyde has directed that a lot of our ESE staff are not to be pulled to substitute unless in extreme situations. We know that Ann Pasco's team has pulled network managers except for, extenuating circumstances. That splitting classrooms has already been an issue when those folks have been able to be pulled for subbing. And now that those options are limited or no longer available for principals to use those personnel to sub, we know the teacher shortage isn't getting better and neither is the sub shortage, and that it's just going to continue to get worse. And so that, and knowing that it's been happening and now it's going to continue to get worse with these other things coming down from Mr. Hyde, we wanted to be proactive with that because teachers do get their classes split up. And we said 10 because my class, if I'm out, might get split up between 3 people. So JD might get 8 of my kids, Heather might get 8 of my kids, and Curtis might get 8 of my kids. Because you can't put, usually the way our classrooms are set up, you can't put, I already have 30 kids in my room. You can't put another 30 in there. There's nowhere for nobody to sit. And so splitting them up usually is in groups of 5, 8, or 10, right? And they're split up between 3 or 4 different people already when they are split up. And so that's where the number 10 came from, was that no more than 10. So you can't put, if I have 30 kids in my class, you can't put more than 40 kids for me to be responsible for in a period if you're splitting kids up. And this should be used as a last resort. Because as a teacher, if I voluntarily give up my planning time to go into a class, that class is still getting some semblance of instruction because I'm a certified teacher, even though I may not be certified to teach English. I'm a competent individual that can go in and read plans and deliver some semblance of instruction to that class for that class period. Whereas when you're splitting classes up, it should be used as a last resort, but it also should be compensated for, because now not only are you splitting this class up and interrupting their instruction, then you're also interrupting my kids' instruction, because it may not be an algebra teacher to an algebra teacher. I may be trying to teach algebra and then I have these 10 kids that are in English 3, and they may have some things to do, but they may not, depending on the circumstance. And so me now having an extra workload for that period, or even for that whole day, because that teacher's class might be split up for the entire day. And I might get their first period, their second period, their third period, their fourth period, whatever. That if a sub was not filled for that, there's no mechanism for teachers to get paid for covering that class if they're being split up. And so you're saving money by not filling the sub, and then by splitting the class where there is no mechanism for those teachers to get paid right now. And so that's where this language came from.
And that helps. And to the splitting of the 10,
Mhm.
18 to 20, that makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
I also want to put this in the room, still holding to striking the language. We are in negotiations with our sub vendors as well, trying to evaluate those hourly rates of pay for those folks. And the fact that we want to be competitive with our surrounding districts. And right now, we're looking at fill rates in excess of 90%. So I know we have pockets where it's hard to find subs, and we could name schools, and some of
Yes.
them are the ESE, to your point.
Mhm.
We can't get around that. So to that point, I'm anticipating an increased fill rate,
Mhm.
hopefully, even beyond the 90% that we've been tracking.
Mhm.
That's where I'm at. Go back to the ESE staff are being pulled, because I know that that's a priority to not pull those staff.
To not pull.
And I know, we're trying not to pull the network folks as
Uh-huh.
well. That would have been a last year's piece, looking back probably.
But now knowing that those folks are not going to be available as readily as they were last year, because we had a lot of ESE inclusion teachers, LEAs, ESE paras, ESE support people, even resource teachers that actually had maybe a small group of kids assigned to them, but they ended up splitting up that class to move that teacher to sub. And now with that directive, Mr. Hyde is telling principals, no, can't do it, and now and the same with network managers, we had schools using network managers to sub, and that's on the kibosh. And so we anticipate the splitting of classes actually becoming more of an issue this year, now that those certain personnel are not going to be available to sub.
And can I interject? A lot of the times when this happens, at least at the secondary level, it's not something that you had a sub planned for. It is something happened and a teacher couldn't make it on time to work, and maybe they're out first period, or there was an emergency and they're having to leave early. So there might not even be a sub anywhere attached to that job. And it might just be that you don't have personnel to cover. And previously, we might have pulled an inclusion teacher. We might have pulled a network manager to cover that class. Now that's no longer an option. And when you look at some of these classes, like say my 7th period, a couple of years ago, I had 38 kids in my class. And then all of a sudden I had to take 8, 10, 15, or however many it worked at that moment, just so there was an adult with these children. That becomes a burden on me.
And we've been tasked to not involve teachers as much as possible. So we even had meetings last week with vendors about this. So.
Well, and it should be an absolute last resort, right? Because obviously safety is paramount. Safety is the number one concern, and because you can't have learning going on if kids aren't safe. But with split classes, this should be a last resort. But also we've been increasingly hearing more and more concern and complaint about the split classes, and that's what preempted this proposal.
I'm just thinking out loud. Letter C is when you have to cover, you volunteer during a planned time.
Yes.
Letter D is what you're telling me would be not a planned.
I actually have kids that I'm instructing, and I'm,
So
yeah.
remember my discussion of layers again.
Mhm.
So we are yet creating, I'm going to say it again, more layers, but follow me. So in letter C, it says you're going to be paid your daily rate of pay. So we're going to key that in, right? That works in the system. And I'm going to lean over and look to the people to my left here, where you say add an additional $20 per hour. That in addition to their daily rate of pay?
$20 per class period. So they wouldn't be there.
That's all got to be coded
Mhm.
on top of those other pieces.
Mhm.
So think about the secretaries, think about those folks, well, was it on your planning time or otherwise,
Okay.
So what if we said at their regularly hour rate of pay for the duration of the time these kids are under their care?
So from the
Because-
system perspective, I'm sorry, Brian.
Yeah, go ahead. That's what I wanted was.
We do not have, this is going to be a change. We don't have anything in there for $20. Which is minimal compared to my other big concern. This is a special activity. If this is not entered in time, which is on the teacher and on the secretary. This will be a significant drain on the system. And what I mean by that is we have already seen, we've been keeping track of it so that we can figure out where we need to either provide more training or more accountability, because it can be both. But one of the things we are seeing is that we all do it. I do it too. You know, we hold on, we sub or hold on to it, and then 3 months later, like, I didn't submit my pay.
That's what I'm talking about.
And then they submit it, and that causes massive issues because it screws up the logic in the system. It is assumed the system is built that I work today, I will get paid in this pay period. That is how it is built. And so anything you put into the system that requires a manual entry, when it does not get entered in a timely manner, and I mean before that pay period is over, we have a problem.
Who triggers the splitting of classes?
Usually it's
The
admin.
admin,
So the teacher doesn't have the authority to do that?
it'd be the admin that's responsible for the safety of the kids because Stephanie's not, she's got to leave during the day or she was out all day and we couldn't get a sub.
Yeah.
So if the principal is the one response, can trigger the splitting of the class, not the teachers, right? When the principal be responsible, should be accountable to ensure that the pay is of the
It would fall to the
additional,
supervisor,
right? Why
not
would
the
it fall?
teacher.
But my point to her daily rate of pay piece is you're already being paid your daily rate of pay. You're just having more kids in your classroom.
Look, let's just put,
And that's why, and actually that's why, because we have kind of this system triggered for the para sub. And so we tried to
Mhm.
kind of model it, like they get an extra 25 for a half day, an extra 50 for a full day. And so, because we have a system kind of in place like that for the para.
Can we stick
Yeah.
a pin, or not stick a pin, let's just go segue.
Okay,
But I think that's different because the para isn't being paid as a teacher and they're taking on some of those roles, subbing during those capacities. This, on the other hand, is within the teacher contract. I get the planning period because that's yours.
yeah.
Let's pay you your daily rate of pay for that. And then go from there. But otherwise, it's not good form. It's not good practice to have kids brought into your classroom. But at the end of the day, sometimes there are no options
Agreed.
for the admin or for the teacher. So we just have to all work.
And the only thing I'd push back on a little bit is that I understand, I hear what you're saying about it is the teacher's responsibility. They're teaching and it's a teaching. They are paid to teach 6 or 7 classes a day. When you break classes and you stuff classes into my class, that is not what I'm being paid for. I'm being paid to teach a class, which is the students on my roster, not the students on my neighbor's roster or my neighbor's roster, but the students on my roster. So that's where I take a little bit of exception to what you're saying is, yes, it is teaching, but it's also not even sometimes something that I teach. It's a lot of times not something I'm certified to teach. And now you've disrupted my class in which I am responsible for getting my students to the finish line. And by that, I mean, I'm responsible for how I end up effective or highly effective.
But this is a single day. It could even be for a period. And this is how this has gone for me. It's Miss Capizzello is absent for her period. If you're from Miss Capizzello's class and you're here with me today, you have a packet that she's given you. I need you to please take a seat back here and I'll monitor you, and then tomorrow or the next day or whenever your illness or whatever reason you're not there, you're back, we go on. But it's not as though it's your area of certification or your teaching. I'm going to argue that many times it's probably like a sub-plan. It's a packet of stuff. It's a supervisory function.
It actually shouldn't
this-
be a packet. It should be in Schoology.
Well, or Schoology, sorry, old school.
Be in Schoology. Every student has a device.
But that goes back to that sub versus this usually happens with, there's no packet made.
Yeah, but that is my point. That I will say is my point. Every staff member, and we have talked about this, will have their stuff in Schoology. We have spent a year training that was agreed upon by these groups and we spent last year training. So that should not be the case. And if that is the case, that should be addressed with the administration. And the teacher should be held accountable for that, and the administration should be held accountable. And
I
we've
agree.
already talked to principals about how do we get them reports for that. There's also 9 people available to give PD when that occurs. I will tell you why I am concerned about this. I am concerned about this because our focus should be on good supports for students. And what we are creating here with this is a lot of manual input. And I don't care at what level the manual input has, that is going to take away the focus of the teachers and the principals to focus on what they need to do in the building. This is going to hurt your system. And this is going to cause problems because of the way the system works. If we had a system that would allow for immediate timekeeping, it would allow for immediate input of that and not extra manual input on any level, I would not be giving you a hard time about it. And we might have that when we go to HANA, but we do not have that now. And we will not have that because SAP is not built for teachers to go in and manually input their data. So anytime you are doing that is going to be outside of the system. And we already have an overpayment, underpayment issue. I've already been asked by people in this room on both sides of the table to fix that. This is going to cause problems in that.
I wouldn't disagree with anything you just said. My only thing is, my only pushback is going to be, I'm the teacher that's there taking these kids in. Maybe my stuff is on Schoology. I am taking on workload, and what essentially that issue lands us is that I have to suck it up.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying that I hear the problem that you're trying to resolve, and I'm not negating that problem. But what I am saying is we are making the problem worse.
But this is something triggered by the principal. So, but I mean, I'm sorry,
It's triggered by the principal in an emergency situation.
exactly. So it's supposed to be like Stephanie said, rare. It's triggered by the principal. So the principal needs to really do their due diligence. And if it's a last resort, right, it shouldn't, in my opinion, it shouldn't befall.
Well, and the genesis of this language is that it's not becoming a rare occurrence anymore.
Right.
This is becoming more
Practice.
more of a general practice now, and that is
I understand that, and that is, I'm not disagreeing. I want you to hear me. I am not disagreeing with you saying that this is an issue. I am not disagreeing with you saying that this shouldn't be something that is discussed. I'm not disagreeing that this is a point of confusion. I am disagreeing with the belief system that if a principal is in an emergency situation and they need to pull someone to do this, that they are going to have the time, the intellect, or the emotional bandwidth at that moment during an emergency situation to make sure this is done correctly. So we are continuing to make the same problem. Teachers are humans and principals are humans. And I am telling you, you guys can make that decision, but I am going to be clear. And I was told that that was my role here. This is going to create the same problem that we have ended up in this year. This is going to be a problem on the system because of the way the pay has to get inputted. You're going to have errors. You're going to have problems.
I want to go back, if I may, because you started it with the principal. You said it was a principal issue. And I want to say it actually goes back before that.
Okay.
It's going to sound wrong. It's not going to come out right. It starts with the teacher because they're out with personal leave. They're out with sickness, whatever that leave is for that day. That's the trigger. And it can come in a full day. It can come in a half day. It can come in a certain number of periods because they're sick and have to leave. And then we're scrambling to deal with that, to allow that teacher to have access to what those leaves that we've bargained. So yeah, the principal calls the ball on splitting the classes and all of that, but that wasn't something that we had expected someone to be there that morning. They got sick. We couldn't control that.
Well, and I think
That's
to Wilfredo's point, he wasn't saying that, I think just as far as the system was concerned, that it wasn't the teacher's responsibility. If the principal's making if the principal's making a decision to split, then the principal will be the one communicating with the payroll secretary. I think that was Wilfredo's.
So, but for special activity purposes and things like that, we would have to have the teacher's signature on something saying that they did that. Then the payroll secretary would have to sign it, and then the principal has to sign it, essentially saying, I approve this, I asked this teacher to do this. So we would have to see those 3 signatures.
So the signature would be the principal first because he has to trigger the emergency split, right? It gives it to the teacher. Here, sign here.
Our special activities doesn't work that way, but yeah, I mean.
As to stick to your thing, right? So the principal, I'm the principal, an emergency happened, right?
Mhm.
Because someone used their benefit of sick leave. And so I got the tick as an example, again, just stick to the thing. I sign it, go to the teacher here, you gotta sign this, and then go on my way into the office, secretary here, sign here,
Mhm.
and then pass it on.
That's not how it happens in reality.
So I was gonna say that that's not reality, but
Right, but to kind of,
That's not how it happens. It takes days. And if this happens the day before the payroll is due, which is going to happen,
Mhm.
and it can't all happen right in that 30 minutes, you now have a problem in the payroll cycle.
But aren't there?
That's what I'm saying.
Actual deadlines too,
Yeah.
though.
But that's my point. If it's got to be that your payroll deadline is that day or the next day. If all these manual steps aren't done before the payroll deadline, now you've got an issue that you're creating into the cycle.
So I have a question for that. So
Mhm.
let's say it happened in that cycle.
Mhm.
All, and I'm not minimizing what you're saying, but just let me say it badly.
Yeah.
All that means is it's going to end up, instead of you're being able to be paid on this cycle, you'll get paid on the next cycle.
If it gets input, what we see is, and this is where I go back to the times, what we see is months go by that it does not get entered. And we do see that on all three sides.
So I guess the question to me would be, and I'm asking wouldn't it be advisable to say you have a time frame, a reasonable time frame to enter your data? Or you know, if it's not entered within the next month, you know, because I don't disagree with the fact that I'm a big believer in some personal responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, that there's got to be some personal responsibility here. Is that something that we can?
I mean, if I'm subbing and I knew I was gonna get paid $20, I mean, that's a nice Chick-fil-A dinner for me. And I don't cook.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go hunt down my principal and say, give me the money.
$20 per hour come up, because that's
Not per hour, or I guess per hour, yes.
Yeah.
No, per hour, per class, period, yeah,
50% pay increase
yeah.
for 10 students.
We figured
How did that come?
our rationale there was that since this is the rarest option, it should also be the most costly option.
So it's almost sounds punitive.
It's also lower than your hourly rate of pay. Like we were trying to be relatively
Yeah,
reasonable.
because the regular hourly rate of pay for teachers starts at 31 something now.
It'd be $120.
In a pretty unreasonable situation. It is unreasonable to take.
And we were trying to think about what you paid a sub for the daily rate and kind of dividing it up.
And I want to,
That's kind of the rationale. We were, so two things in tandem. So it wasn't punitive. We looked at what you pay a sub for, like the daily rate. We looked at the daily rate, hourly rate for teachers, minimum about 31 something. And then so it's a little bit more than what you would pay a sub, not much more. And that's where we came up with that number.
and I want to point out that when these things happen, and they can be even with 10 students, if I already have 30 plus students in my class, and most of your classes do, my whole class is disrupted. That day does not come off of one of my days.
176.
That may be my SAO group. Like all of a sudden, this impacts my evaluation, which will later impact my money. It impacts the learning of our students, and no offense, but in a time when there is very much the perception that some of us are not doing our job to get our students where they need to be in learning gains. But these are the type of things that are happening across the district on a daily basis that are not looked at when we're told, why are your students not making gains? Well, for one thing, I had 2 or 3 days this week where I had 10 extra students in that class that were learning something totally different, and I'm trying to wrangle them. That doesn't get taken into account.
It usually creates behavior problems and behavior issues. And so, in talking about the conversation, so maybe there's more of an incentive to limit splitting classes. And so if we put a limit on the classes that you can split, and then if you have to split, then it triggers maybe a monetary incentive. maybe we want to talk about that because we do feel that this is going to become an issue this year with the limiting of ESE staff being able to sub and the limiting of network managers being able to sub.
I can tell you it is. We're already, I mean, next week, we're supposed to be back and we have, I know my school is 7 teachers. We don't have classes for, or, you know, we don't have teachers who are in classrooms right now. That's.
I mean, this is a reality.
We were just discussing
Will work.
if there's a team that has 14 or more, that we get a second person, and we were talking about putting 40+ kids in a classroom.
But they're not lifting weights, Christy. They're just.
I do want to clarify one thing that we talked about. No student in this situation should not have information in Schoology for them to do. I do want to clarify that.
Couldn't.
But we need to talk about that because that is on the teacher end, not on the principal end. And the teachers have
I don't
been
disagree.
trained. They have been told how to do it. They do have time.
And
And they have a system that they can be shared. And if a teacher's out for multiple days, other content can be shared. They also have PLC groups that they can go into. There are 9 people at the district, and there's a ticketing system that any principal can say, we're out, we need content moved over. So I do want to be clear that teachers should not be put in a situation, if we're both teaching, you should not be put in a situation that I am leaving and I am leaving my students without something to do.
Well, to me, it's not just that. And to be clear, I'm not in a classroom, but I've been in this situation. Have we been in this situation on this side? We know it's an extra stress. Whether the kids have work or not, there's always going to be a few kids out of 10 who are going to instigate a little fun, right? It just adds to the stress. And we have heard all day, and I think in a really good way, for us to be mindful of what we're talking about here, how that impacts the burden on staff at the district. We need to understand that when we're talking about stuff like this, when we're splitting classes, that impacts people at schools where the learning takes place as well. And it just feels like it's always just an afterthought. I mean, really, that it's, and I like everybody at this table, you're good people, but it just comes across super disrespectfully. We're constantly devaluing the classroom, whether you intend to or not. That's how it comes across to me.
And I think that's my actual point, is because some of the statements were that there won't be work prepared for students. And from my perspective, everything that is being done right now is to give teachers time to work with students. All of these resources that are being put in place are to try to give teachers valuable resources that have been vetted, are curricularly aligned to standards, which will turn around learning in the classroom, because the most important person in the classroom is the teacher to help teach that. And the teachers are being given support to be prepared for that. They are given the ability that if you struggle technology, you can work with a colleague and you can share it. There is no barrier. So that's why you hear me saying that. I agree with you 100%. If the conversation is, this is added stress, that's a different conversation. But when we say it's because the teacher doesn't have time to prepare materials for the student, I do not think that's an accurate statement.
No, that's not.
But that was said earlier, so that's why you heard that response. I completely agree with you that it is very stressful when you have all of a sudden, I taught AP US history. I'm teaching the atomic bomb, and all of a sudden somebody from English wants to come in and talk about ethos. Like, those two things don't collide. I get it, 100%. But that wasn't where the conversation was going. So
I think that was,
defer back to you.
it was the intent, maybe not the actual verbalization, but the intent of where this language came from
Understood.
is what you're talking about.
But I think we have to be careful because there is millions of dollars being put into some of these resources for teachers to be able to use in the classroom, and we need them to use them.
I was just gonna say, I get what you're saying, Ms. Pasco. I just feel like also in an emergency situation, I'm just gonna defend the teacher who, let's say, have a medical situation that happens. Yes, they should have plans for that day. They should. I'm not saying.
It's an emergency plan. It's in the it's in the guidelines and they should be in Schoology.
Way now, I'm just gonna ask this, is there a way now for those emergency plans to be opened by admin and moved over?
They don't need to be opened by admin and moved over. They need to be in the Schoology course. They can be, anybody at central office can do it.
Okay.
We've put in,
That's fine.
we're working on plans for substitutes to be able to have digital learning. Paras have accounts, paras have laptops. all of this.
I'm not disagreeing, there should be emergency plans, there always should be, but I'm just thinking about, you know, I've had times in my own life where I got really ill and had to go home and that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And those are some of the things that we tell teachers, have an digital emergency plan sitting there for that very, very reason.
So I have
Have a VHS.
I am actually one of the people who loves Schoology. It makes my life easy. Because of lesson plans and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I literally every day, like I have a week and then under that is 5 folders, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. However, I don't give my kids work every single day. So like it may say in there what we're doing, but that might be, I'm showing them a video and we're discussing what to do, or we're reading a story that I'm passing out to them.
That's why you would have an emergency plan in this situation of what y'all are talking about. We're only going back to the statement of we need to pay someone because there's extra work to plan. That's all we're going back to.
It's extra work to have 10 more children in their room.
And that I have no argument to. So we're only going back to that one statement.
I have to say this, so. We understand additional bodies being introduced into the classroom. We keep saying 10, but what happens if it's 3? If it's 4? What happens if you don't have a class of 30, you have a class of 15 and 3 kids are added? So what I'm saying is that language is very specific and we keep saying 10. This says no more than 10. What if I get 2? So does that justify the pay rate? These are just questions. I haven't answered them, but does that justify?
It says no more than 10, which means the anticipated top amount would be 10.
So he's been saying is 10 is $20, is 2 also equal to $20? So
That's what I'm trying to say.
What I would-
We haven't set a parameter. What I'm saying is.
He's saying, what if you get one?
What's the entire parameter? What are the entire parameters?
What I would imagine
Stuff you have to.
is when the principal is making these decisions to farm these kids out, because that's what we call it, right? Farming them out. If they saw 21 kids on the roster, right? I wouldn't imagine that a principal would go 10, 10, and 1. Although I've met some of principals who might do that. I also know that sometimes 3 kids can feel like 10, depending on which 3 kids they are.
That's the truth.
That could be in your regular class.
So.
Yeah, that's
we-
Stephanie Yost.
But then, yeah, that's me. And then, but you're adding 3 of me into
So.
Curtis's class that already got 10 of me.
Yeah. So we did have a conversation about the numbers specifically, just because, I mean, on the whole, and granted, all schools are different, but on the whole, like elementary school rooms are significantly larger than maybe like your newer K-8s and whatnot. And so just like in a physical space sense, they might be able to accommodate more. You know, it's like,
And to my point, y'all are talking, however, you were saying you rejected this language entirely versus what you were saying is thresholds. And that's a different discussion.
I understand. Well, what I was saying, what I was saying is that I was not countering the original.
I won't put you on-
But we were pondering and thinking about why this was put into play, why it was put into place, and we kept using these numbers. And I'm going to overuse the term arbitrary. I'm overusing that because we just kept settling on 10. And I'm saying if we're gonna really think about in totality, what if it's 4? What if it's 5? Are we still thinking about it from the same standpoint? I was just saying, we just needed to add that to the thought. That's what we was doing.
That's all I
So
think.
we kind of beat it.
Right, so I think
I think
Yeah.
you're rejecting the language
We have presented a rejection of the language.
All right, so we're either gonna hold or accept.
That puts it in your court.
Yeah.
Okay.
For you
So let's-
to consider and
We'll
evaluate.
consider it back and then we'll come back to that. Let's do that.
Perfect.
And then I have, so I'm gonna keep these together.
We don't have one.
Per head. Per head.
It says that you get 10
Okay,
to 10 to put in the class.
we have,
This one goes.
you already sent it to me? No,
No, you took it from me.
no, I did take it from you. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
thank
And why there's lack of
So
clarity.
we each have one.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So at this, do you want to move into MOUs, Brian?
I do.
Okay,
See. Which gears. Fine.
so as we're changing gears to MOUs, I had sent a question over through email last week. With, Laura had sent, we had talked, oh, let me do the backstory. I had spoken to Mr. Hyde about, as we had been going to our DA schools this spring, the secretary's doing the payroll for the DA hours. Wanted compensation for the extra workload. And so we had, talked through, and then we had landed on a $600 supplement for them. And then Laura had sent over the addendum to that DA MOU to include the $600 supplement to be paid out July 31st. I signed it. I gave it to her during when we were doing evaluation appeals. And then I never got a signed copy back. And then when as secretary, because we had let secretaries know that we had signed it. And then as we were coming up closer, they were asking when they were going to be getting that. And then they hit, some of them had reached out to personnel and payroll and copied us, and then they didn't have it. And so,
I think this is an easy fix. It's
Okay.
Less. Laura's back Monday. So we need to double back on the signed copies.
okay,
It should be a physical.
Yeah,
think we
'cause I-
Sent it,
yeah.
but.
I signed it, but then I couldn't, I looked through Laura's emails and I didn't save a signed copy.
Genocide, that she didn't know what we were working on here because I
Okay.
did recollect it, but I didn't know if we were all the way to signatures. So
Yeah.
I think this is resolvable and
Okay,
let's get the documents
okay,
and then we'll go back and load.
Okay.
$600. They will get their money.
okay,
Because
okay,
we'd agreed on the MOU,
yes,
and we'll just work backwards.
Okay,
from there.
perfect.
Just reassure them of that. And then we'll, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Language at July.
okay,
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
again, we've literally, you have seen Laura's sheet. We've
Oh, I
got
know,
about
I know.
almost 40 MOUs that we track
I know.
during the year. It's. I need a staff person just to do MOUs that we write.
so do I.
Case in
Me
point,
too.
the one that I just handed across the table is the one that I think the team or representatives from your team has heard about from Linda King.
Yes.
The insurance committees. This is about the ABCs of diabetes. Do I need to go further than that? Because I can give you still a 30,000 foot summary.
Oh, yeah. I want to hear what this is.
Yeah, because I actually haven't seen this yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 30,000 foot summary is this. There's a new program
Oh, there's three because
called
it's
the
asking.
ABCs of diabetes
Oh,
that Ms. King has put out. Or we've already put this to ASME and they've signed it. What this means is people that have diabetes, I'm gonna need to have them.
Here you go.
There's specific elements of folks that have type 2 diabetes. And what it says here, that as of January 2024. Let me just read.
Talking about.
I think it's better if I just read it all the way.
Actually, can you just give me a second just to read it? Just, okay, yeah, yeah. I do much better if I just read it instead of listening.
Short version is they're gonna still get the same service. They'll get what they need from a pharmacy. And it will be at a savings and a reduced rate.
Is that all it's about? Is
Yes.
switching,
That's-
getting it from
that's-
the pharmacy instead of the,
And I can read
Okay.
the details with you, but that's the short story.
what this is about is, we had care management companies
Mm-hmm,
and we were buying from them
mm-hmm.
and it was costing much more than if you actually did direct from the pharmacy.
See,
And to be honest with you, we were using the care management companies originally because we thought it was cheaper than going to the pharmacy.
hasn't been.
And it's not. And so, in fact, a lot of us have already made the switch to the pharmacy. So
And I,
that's all this is, and that's fine.
if you look at the last two the paragraphs on page 2 of 3 that start with effective January 1, 2024. All medications and supplies covered in the ABC's diabetes program will continue to be covered at 100%, only when using a participating pharmacy. Continuous glucose monitors, insulin pump supplies that are purchased through a DME provider will be covered at the standard plan benefits and member cost share. As of January 1, 2024, the CGMs available at a participating pharmacy include Freestyle Libre, Dexcom G5, G6, and G7. I asked, well, what if somebody has something different than that? The response I got was they'd be under the care of a doctor who would know the plans and they would evaluate the best option there.
And of those, it would be very similar to being in network or out of network. You know, that's a wide variety of coverage for the different types and different brands of whatchamacallit. And the original we did hear as the pilot was the Dexcom.
Yeah.
But I hear the Libre may be actually even a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
And then it just goes on to talk about the details of the pumps and the therapeutics.
Mhm.
And then
And actually, I'm really excited about number 2.
number 2 is where I want
I'm
to
very
get
excited
into.
about that.
Let's just look at the first paragraph there, because as of January 1, 2024, the health plan will offer a $35 copay.
I know about
And
that.
Stephanie, would you like to read what's in the brackets?
Yes. So and I did know about this. I didn't know about the change, or I guess I did preliminarily. I didn't know that the pharmacy changed, but I did know about the.
She talked about this 2 ICs ago.
Yes.
So it actually goes,
So as of January 1st of 2024, the PCPS health plan will offer a $35 copayment reduced from the current 50. That's to all high quality rated physician specialties using in bold health provider guide. Or identified as in bold rated high quality specialties available on Florida Blues website. It's also on the,
Thank you, Joe Biden.
yeah, thanks, Joe Biden.
it's just like a no-brainer.
No,
It's a good-
it's also on the hub and on our district website too.
And the only thing I'm gonna ask, and I know you're working on the thing, is actually, I think this, if we're going to do this, it is far too, it's more difficult than it should be to find these links on the website. It should be on the front page.
Yeah.
It should have a spot like one of those quick links on the front page. And I would suggest that because it will be much more, putting this on paper, if they can't follow up and find it, they're gonna just continue to pay the $50.
Well, and the app is really easy to use. I've downloaded the app. And actually, I even looked, I just was curious because I was trying to find a primary doctor for, somebody over on the East Coast, and it even extends out. And I was able to find a primary care doctor that was highly rated in that app that was all the way out to the East Coast. So it's pretty cool.
So is this in bold?
It's just getting there to see it. In bold rates.
Right, but what I'm
Based
saying
on
is,
criteria.
You have
It
yours?
should be 3.
Marianne has the other one. Here's mine.
Well, that,
There's one of them. I'll put it back in the folder.
that's actually, I have a question. So,
It says I need 3 signatures. I'll come back.
the bold incentive is not just for diabetics, correct?
No,
Correct.
it's for primaries, it's for specialties, it's for everything.
So
Good question.
the problem,
Quality. foods.
okay, so it is, it's in 2, I just didn't remember if I saw both of them outlined.
And
There are
for the
2.
record, we will be featuring this in our first benefit of
Yes.
the month.
Yes.
So is it any
In a
doctor?
in a
or
week.
just-
No, the ones in
Yeah.
bold that
That are rated.
Yeah.
We'll go through it in our first rep meeting because I want to make sure we're getting this out early. No, I'm very excited.
And the ratings allow you to find doctors that have better outcomes. At the end of the day, the doctors that are higher rated have better outcomes.
Well, my primary is at the clinic, and like, when I see specialists, I guess I'm wondering if the.
There you go.
Yeah,
And then
not all specialties yet.
find one that you
Okay.
already did.
I did it, I gave it to her and we had evaluation appeals.
Yeah,
Cardiac.
I remember it being discussed.
Yeah, and she sent it over, I think, it's like,
No, I'm listening to you and agreeing. I don't know that I can remember.
the first week of June. And then I signed it, gave it to her evaluation.
I don't think dermatology, but anyway, they're not all the specialties are there just
Point
yet.
at Roz, she's.
Yes.
What is highly rated? Like I just looked at my primary care person and she's on here, so that's cool.
Yeah.
But what is their score have?
So I believe if I remember correctly, it's like an 85 or higher. So I think it's an 85% or higher, I think. It's in the 80s. It may be 80 or higher, but I think it's 85.
That sounds.
Get that.
Yeah, but we'll get that. I believe from the discussion,
Because like.
I believe from the
1%
discussion,
green, so I didn't
it's
know
either
what-
80 or 85. It's
Green is usually good.
green. Green is good.
Green is good.
Green is. So
Assume red would be bad.
don't go to that.
That's.
65%.
I signed all three.
Yeah, they're all right here. They're all
They're in the red
Oh.
folder.
Here, I'm gonna give these to Karen.
See, red's bad.
Red.
No, I'm done, but then
Oh.
set some dates.
Yes, so let's look at calendars.
I get out 15 minutes.
Yeah, let's look at calendars now.
It's the same. It's the same. The pharmacy, because you get those through the pharmacy. You don't have a desk.
It's sad when your babysitter asks if she wants to get Jackson chocolate tonight, and I'm like, yep, sure, might as well 3 nights in a row. Let's keep this streak going.
Do you have a?
Thought I lost that.
Yeah, we got all 3 signed. All right, so let's,
If I guess my question.
Or they have to be signed. I'm gonna put one of these in.
no, you can keep that one. No, they have color copies that are signed. I already signed all 3.
And then they're gonna go back for somebody else's signature.
Fred needs to sign it. Margie's already signed it.
I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
it,
That's fine.
just so you know that.
Another copy, I have an extra copy.
We made copies too, so we're good with that.
Okay.
All right, so we're looking after August 11th. Because pre-planning is a whirlwind. And Brian, is your team agreeable to meet more in the afternoons now? Maybe possibly
Yeah, we
into like early
have enough
evening?
advance notice. I mean, we can manipulate schedules and be.
Okay. What does your week of the 14th look like for August? So we're looking at the week of the 14th in the afternoon.
Like Thursday and Friday right now look good.
Our first rep meeting will be the 24th, so it won't, the 17th will be fine for us.
Actually, I could do Monday, Tuesday, Thursday of that week in the afternoon. When were you talking to start? Like at noon or 1?
I mean, I think probably a half day, in the afternoon, for like a half day for people if we were to duty release them.
What day?
So maybe the 15th
I'm 15.
of August.
15th would be lovely.
That's not a third day backwards.
Yeah, it is.
Third day.
So do we want to try? Well, hold on.
So let's get.
Is the 15th Tuesday?
Yeah. Let's get through the first full week. So
23rd is.
23rd
Clear.
is what?
It's pretty clear for us.
You want to look at the 23rd so that we can get through a first full week with kids?
Yes.
And that also gives JD and I some time
That works. for me.
to work on some spreadsheets too.
Okay.
So let's look at the 23rd.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
23rd, when-
so yeah.
My birthday's the first.
Put this in the closet for a minute.
Yeah, well,
You are.
23, okay.
I'll take
If we start at 1, we could because people would need to travel here, we could do to release at noon for them to travel. Which would be about a half day for most people. Then they can put in for like a half day sub. And then do you want to do like 1 to 6? And because since we're having to start a little bit later and then end at 6.
Fine by me. I'll make myself. available.
Okay,
Let me rephrase it. I'm happy to be there.
okay. So let's do that. Let's do let's do 1 to 6 and then we'll,
On the 23rd.
yeah, and then we'll duty release everyone at 12 to travel.
Come on.
That's 5 hours. I'm gonna propose that we maybe spend like we did this time, maybe the first part on some language stuff.
Yeah. We actually don't have much language
And
to
we'll
wrap up.
right into where we left off on.
Yeah. And let's do, and we can make a game plan too.
What do we need to do that next discussion? I'm thinking about action steps.
So action steps, what we need to look at, we have the language that's still on the table that we didn't get to today. We have to revisit teacher C, appendix C. JD and I, this will give us some time to continue working on the spreadsheets for the support staff. Because I really think the teacher one is, and the only other thing, JD, that I would want to look at with the teacher is what would a 24-25 and a 25-26 decompression look like to continue to break it up, kind of like what we've done with the support staff. But I really think the teacher one is, I mean, we've spent all the money and we've moved levels down because there's really not much different ways we could do that.
But did you introduce, was it introduced as a proposal?
Yeah. Well,
Oh, I mean, that's,
the
I
salary,
don't think so.
it wasn't.
Yeah.
The concept.
we did the
Right,
model.
Just so that, because this is
Yeah.
where we get confused. So,
Actually, everything has been concept.
well, no, not everything.
The salaries, yes, the
right.
salaries, yes.
So
The salaries. yes.
that's what I wanted to hear. That's why I asked. So if we have agreement on the concept,
Right. Now
right,
let's go to the-
then I
Then
think,
we can start working up the actual,
then hang on.
Go ahead,
So
go
then
ahead.
you and JD can meet up because we have agreement on the concept. Then, in my opinion, when we meet on the 23rd,
we can sign off.
you can just introduce it as a formal proposal.
Mhm.
And then, just to double check that sort of thing. And
I'd
then,
love to see the
Yeah.
final spreadsheet.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, and we need to get with Jenna to make sure the placement schedules are accurate too. So we've got to do some work on the back end now that we kind of have a model. We've got to make sure and work with personnel that the placement schedules,
you can
Are
see that,
correct.
he can, and Brian.
and then
see
we
that
can see
advance.
that. We can share that as a subgroup.
And the priority will be ESP para.
Well, I mean, teachers probably the
Teachers,
closest
yeah.
to being wrapped up. And then we might have all three ready to go for the 23rd.
Because that might be actually the easier one to finish.
Falling over in his chair. You okay, Jay?
I'll help you, JD. We can do it together.
If we can't, we'll break it into parcel by group and then work out from there. I mean, we want to get as much done as we can.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that can be a pretty good game plan.
All right.
And then we might need maybe one or two more smaller sessions to be wrapped up by the end of August, beginning of September. And really what we'll need from Anne as we're starting to kind of come to a close on this is we're going to need realistic timelines. So we're going to have to start having timeline conversations too.
Oh,
So
And JDs, because we need to also so I'll start working on the stuff that we've talked about in the JDs.
Scene's working on.
Working on.
yeah, I get confused when y'all do that to me.
Oh,
It's, job descriptions.
job descriptions, not actual JD, not JDs.
23rd is in the bank.
Yeah. Do we want to look at one more date and just get it on the calendars?
Folks,
Let's do it.
because my next question to you is, okay, what's the global month do you think we'll go out for a vote? next
Well,
month?
I really hope that we can have, and I think it's doable to have a tentative agreement by the end of August, beginning of September. And then that means we would have,
Second date
Yeah.
between that, those
yeah,
goals.
I think so.
We need a backup plan.
Yeah, I agree.
28th.
Do you want Monday, the
Next
28th?
week, or that's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, maybe the 28th. Try to wrap it up before Labor Day. And then that way we have enough time that week. If we are at a place where we can tentatively agree, that would give us time that week to get documents and then go out after Labor Day.
1 to 6 again.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest.
But there was that.
On the 28th, Monday, the 28th.
Yep.
We would have been together on the 23rd.
Yeah,
That gives us.
it gives us a few
time to
days.
regroup.
What time?
1 to 6 again.
Taking notes.
And if it's,
Yep,
Okay.
taking notice. It's,
always change it.
I was also checking on Dr. Williams' calendar as we were going along. It looks good for him too.
Okay. So then Karen, both of those would be duty releases at noon, so they have time to travel here.
Will you be sending those to me?
So do you have an updated list or do I need to resend that? Or does Laura have an updated? Okay, Laura should have our list of folks. But if she gets, when she gets back on Monday and you can't find it, just let me know and I can find it. But I think she has our updated list.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
So we do have time to have this conversation.
I don't know. Highway
Work with
rules.
it.
Okay.
So let's say we use our backup plan, the 28th, we get everything put together, we're done, right?
Mhm.
So what's your timeline? Remember, your timelines are all over the place. So
Yeah.
then when would you look to have something to go out for? Does
So,
that go up for review and vote, right?
yeah. And so we have,
Do that.
now
28th, because the.
we would probably be ready to put it out for review the Tuesday after Labor Day, because that would give us 4 days to get all of our documents together and to make sure our messaging is good. We would then be able to put it out for review
September 5th.
on September 5th after Labor Day. And then it has to be right now unless we bring it to the Board of Directors, which we've done the last couple of times, to shorten the review period since everything's electronic now. Our bylaws state 10 working days, but we've, the last couple of times we've gotten agreement and a vote from our board to do it to 5 calendar days.
I'm gonna suggest, since she's gonna need time,
Mhm.
the 10 days might buy you time
Yeah.
to.
Well, but my hope actually is we're not doing a timeline after we have an agreement. We're gonna have a timeline and a workable timeline, like the day that we're signing the tentative agreement.
But what I'm saying is that this wouldn't be one where you'd have to necessarily expedite.
Well, yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is that before we actually sign off on it, we're gonna have Ann and Jenna, Tara, the timeline figured out so that we know that we're not going out and advertising it and putting it out without a date.
When you can expect it.
I'm in violent agreement.
Yeah.
with that. I'm just saying, in the past, you had to.
And I think, when's the board meeting actually on the,
September 5th and October 10th
We won't make the 5th.
well, that's the work session that the vote is,
as the board meeting. Oh, sorry.
sorry, the work.
It says a board meeting,
It is.
Oh, is it?
It's because of the.
October
We have
24th.
to do it. It's always that.
So it would be the one at the end of the month then.
Second one in September.
No.
No?
October
This is the one, this is the one time of the year.
We've also called special meetings too, so we could call a vote like we've done actually last couple of times on the 26th if the board has enough notice. Mr. Hyde's done that the last 2 times actually,
Yes.
where they've
When they.
backed up to the work session and had a vote.
A little bit more.
Time slips by quick.
Because really,
I mean.
we could have
Time.
with our folks,
This thing off.
actually, we can go ahead and end as we're doing calendars because they don't need it.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and end today's session on the live stream as we're just figuring out dates right now. So our next session will be August 23rd from 1 to 6 PM at the PEA office.
It's done.